This is the USHL podcast. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome in to the USHL podcast. Myself and Brent Meske, the Director of Communications for the United States Hockey League. We're giving Ben a show off. He's working hard for the Des Moines Buccaneers, and unfortunately for us, but fortunately for the Bucs, he's got some work to do for them. So he's going to take this episode off, but we don't have much hockey to talk about, Brent. Not much going on in the league right now. We had the central scouting stuff come out last time. The tender signings kind of slowed down a little bit, but we still wanted to make sure to get this episode out because this is a really important one because it's about mental health and mental resilience. And we actually talked to Dr. Ryan Todd, who's a psychiatrist, and he's the CEO of Headversity. And it's an initiative that the league got out in front of and really put an emphasis on, and the players have done a great job with it. You know, like I always talk about how great the USHL is on really getting out in front of things and not waiting for other leagues to do something and react to. They experiment on things and really try to take an initiative on stuff. But Brent, this is something that, you know, hits close to home for you. I know you're an advocate for mental health and really trying to get the word out there and in the stigma that it's, you know, it's a weakness. It's more of just it's an illness that you need to work on, just like everything else in this world. So this is a really special episode, and we got a great interview with Dr. Todd, and he brought a lot of insight into something that's really a great thing for the league and just a great thing in general.
Yeah, I'm really hoping people are going to really appreciate the interview that Dr. Ryan Todd gave us the time for. I mean, he's a great guy to talk to about this. CEO of Headversity, we've had a lot of great initiatives come out between our partnership with the USHL, NHL, and USA Hockey. But I mean, Headversity has to be one of them that you talk about a lot because it is so important now. I mean, ever since Robin Lehner gave that speech, what was it, last award show? I mean, mental health has been something that's been talked about a lot more. It's been not so taboo within the hockey community. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to admit that, you know, you're a human being. You're a hockey player. Hockey players are tough. We know all the cliches about that, but you're still a human being at the end of it. And I think Dr. Todd definitely gave a great insight as to what Headversity does, not only for our players, but all the other people and companies that they work with, and just giving people access in their pocket 24/7 to mental health and resilience training.
And I think something that gets overlooked is junior hockey and that age group, 16 to 20-year-olds, sometimes 15. It's so critical for these kids' lives, right? And their mental toughness, their brain's still developing. And it's a time where if you go back and listen to some of these advocates, some of the stuff they started going through started in juniors, and they didn't have that ability and have the resources that we have now to really speak out. And it's a trying time for kids because people forget these are kids that are still in high school. Sometimes they're sophomores. They're moving away from home for the first time. They're playing a hectic schedule with travel. They're playing a pro-style game. They're getting hit by guys that are 6'4" and 210 pounds. I mean, hockey's the hardest sport in my opinion. A little bit biased, but yeah. No matter what you say, but then you're making a 16-year-old go through the same trials and tribulations without getting paid that a professional does. I mean, it's the mental toughness that you have to play junior hockey is huge, and having this resource is so important for these kids to really help them so they are mentally tough when they do get to the pros, or say they do go to college and just get a normal 9-to-5 job or start their own business or just go through life. Juniors is such an important time in these kids' lives, and the USHL to step up, go above and beyond to give these kids these resources, not only is building great hockey players, but it's building great human beings. And that's why this is so important.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, we have so many alumni that are in the NHL, AHL, ECHL, professional hockey across the globe, but not every single guy that comes through the USHL is going to wind up playing hockey for the rest of their lives. But one consistent thing through all that is going to be mental health and mental resiliency. So having something like headversity where, these guys they're learning so much right now. They're still in school or they're doing online classes. And I mean, speaking from experience, like I never played a sport at this level. I grew up playing sports, but I mean, I can't imagine leaving home at the age that these guys leave home. And yeah, we have great billet families that bring these guys in. They treat them just like they treat members of their own family. But at the end of the day, it's not the family you're used to. And just moving away, and like you said, the schedule that these guys have. I worked before working at the league level. I worked with the Steel, and I mean, we're in the office normal hours there, but you see these guys come in 8, 9 o'clock. They do their morning workout. They go, and then they have study hall where they go out, get lunch. They come back. They practice. If you're a kid that's in a brick and mortar school at the time, you wake up, you go to school, go to 3, 4 classes. You come to the rink, you get right in the locker room, change, you're right on the ice. Then it's 5 o'clock. You go home, you go to your billet house, get dinner, homework. I mean, that's your day. And to be doing that at this age where, every kid is in school. And I mean, as former students, I think we can probably vouch and safely say we feel like we're in school for way too much in the same day. But, just learning this mental resiliency at this age, it's so critical. And even for myself, like I'm 25, like I'm not that far removed from these guys' age group, but I mean, having it, and I'm lucky enough to, through the league, have access to headversity and the app. And it's a really cool app. You can go in there at your own pace, at your own timeline, and just do what you feel you need to work on. So like I said, and probably said it too many times, but in a way, I don't think you can say it enough. Like this partnership with headversity is awesome. And to circle back, I think this interview with Dr. Ryan Todd is definitely going to be something that I hope people get something out of, realize what this partnership has done for all the guys in our league. And we also talked to him a bit about just the regular person, the non-athlete, trying to deal with these times and everything that COVID is bringing up, and people not really being able to live their normal routine and schedule, and just how to help themselves during this time.
Well, enough from us. Why don't we go ahead and hear from the expert himself, Dr. Ryan Todd. Here's our interview we had with the CEO of the mental wellness tech company, headversity. Going a little different route here for this episode, and we're going to be talking to a guy who is in charge of an initiative that we're all really proud about, that the league is really proud about, and something that is really good for not only the game, but just for, guys as a whole. So joining us now on the USHL podcast is Dr. Ryan Todd, who's a psychiatrist and the CEO of the mental wellness tech company, headversity. Ryan, how are we doing, my friend?
We're hanging in there. It's some strange times, trying times. And but yeah, there's been some optimism recently. So I'm feeling good this morning and taking it day by day.
So for you, normally we've been talking to some players and coaches, and they're kind of bored out of their minds finding stuff to do, but you're on the opposite end of the spectrum. You're actually got a lot of stuff going on. You're a busy man. So what have you been up to during all this? And, as sports have kind of taken a halt here.
Yeah, this has been, for better or worse, one of the busiest times of my entire existence. And I've in one sense, I feel blessed and grateful to be able to keep some sort of normalcy in my life and some routine. And the other sense, I know that there's a lot of people who are isolated and suffering and lonely and not having a great time in their house, and as you said, bored. It's been very busy for me. I have two major roles. One is with headversity, and I'm sure we'll kind of dig into all that. But as the CEO and founder of this mental health tech company, we've had an increase in large organizations, sport organizations, workplaces, reaching out and saying, hey, how can we offer support for our people quickly and in a way that's going to actually be helpful and not just contribute to the noise. So that's been very busy, is trying to keep up with the demand. And we're happy to do it because we can feel, good that we're actually contributing something. The last thing that I want to feel right now is helpless. And then in the other role that I have as a psychiatrist, I work in one of the main tertiary care centers in Alberta, so in Western Canada, and so it's a big hospital. It is an epicenter for where we are handling a lot of the COVID-related pieces, and it's been very busy planning, getting ahead of the issues, and also seeing a lot of patients who have either COVID-related things that I deal with. I'll tell you, my niche is a little bit different in psychiatry, and also helping people who have mental health issues otherwise. My niche, just to give you a little context, is on the psychiatry side, is working with people who have faced extreme adversity through a medical trauma or a medical illness or a surgical issue, or they've had a pre-morbid mental health issue. So as you can imagine, there's busyness on both ends of the spectrum right now.
So you mentioned you've seen an uptick at this time, which I think we can all expect something like that for the field that you're in. But when did you start noticing the need for a program like headversity within sports and within the realm that you guys service?
We've always felt that there was a need, and I think managers and coaches and directors and communication leaders within leagues have always seen it, but it's really in the last 2 years has come to the surface and come to fruition, and then even more in the last year, where a lot of directors and managers and coaches are saying, okay, enough is enough, we need something. And in particular, because a lot of players are now open to talking about it. I work with a lot of athletes in some of the outpatient psychiatry work I do, and it was very acceptable, up to about 3 or 4 years ago, for a player to just bury their issues in alcohol and drugs. And that's not acceptable anymore. And that's great. And what is acceptable now is players going to their coach, players going to their manager saying, hey, I have an issue with anxiety or OCD, or maybe I'm drinking too much, or maybe I'm feeling depressed, or I'm dealing with the death of a family member. And coaches and managers are now dealing with that. So what we're seeing is that there's been sort of a downloading effect to frontline leaders in sport. And what we're seeing is those frontline leaders are now saying, hey, we need to put more resources and tools in place, both to help us and to help players who are not hiding their issues anymore. And thank God they're not doing that. And it's really good that they're not doing that. But those issues are now coming to the forefront.
And with that said, how did the partnership come about between the USHL and headversity, and what does this partnership offer to the USHL players and coaches and everyone that has access to it?
Yeah, I'm trying to think back at how this started, but we got approached by Evan Rand, who is a director, and from what I understood, Evan, and he has a really good pulse on what are the needs of the league, and he sits in that seat where he's trying to meet demands as they come up. Again, that's my understanding of how what his position is and how that league operates. But he's very much in tune with the pulse of the league, and I think he had a number of critical conversations with managers, with coaches, with team leaders, with owners. And those team leaders, owners, coaches, managers were coming to Evan and saying, is there something more we can do here? Because A, we don't particularly have the training to deal with mental health issues as they come up. And B, it's obvious that players need the support. So we had some of those conversations in and around a year and a half ago, and things progressed. And as you know, Evan gets things done where a need is needed, and he pushed headversity. And so we've been in a partnership with the USHL since that time, and yeah, it's been an exciting journey for us in providing players the support. And to answer your question, Brent, what we're doing is we give our mental wellness platform to each USHL player, and what that looks like is an ability for players to measure their personal resilience, to track it on a daily basis, and to train resilience. Resilience being that mental ability to get ahead of adversity and to take care of their own mental health. So we're giving each player a tool, and so far the reception has been really cool for us to see that players are digging into it, and the usage of the app has been very strong amongst USHL players.
Touching on one of the things you mentioned with Evan and all the things that he does for the league, something I love about the United States Hockey League since joining the league office is the way that the USHL gets in front of things. They're not afraid to try new things. They're really looking to help out the kids. They're really looking to make the league, USA Hockey as a whole, better, and that's something that the league can put a lot of respect in. But like, what have you seen? I know you mentioned that the response has been great, but compared to other levels and sports you've seen, what's been the USHL usage like? And you talked about that great response. Like, what are players saying, thinking, and what are some of the results you've seen?
It's pretty obvious. Like, it was obvious right away that the USHL cares, and that sounds, I don't know, trite or cheesy, but they actually genuinely care about the personal development of the players. And that might sound obvious to like non-hockey people or even non-sport people, but it isn't, because in my estimation of that is like the product is how that individual performs on the ice, and that's crucially important. That's a cornerstone of how the USHL exists. And but what the league is saying is there's this whole other layer of personal development that we care about, and it actually improves the quote unquote product, to use an outdated kind of term for athletes. So yeah, that was obvious from the start, and the relationship has been growing in terms of what we're able to do. And yeah, we've had some really like great tweets from USHL players saying that they love using the headversity app. It gives them an extra tool to turn to in a time of need. We've had really good reception from the league itself and how the app has been used. One thing we do measure is daily use, and the average USHL player uses the app over 5 minutes a day. So that's an average, which means there's some players who don't use it as much, 1 to 2 minutes, and there's some players who are using it quite a bit more. So that's really cool for us to see, and I think we're happy about that, because that means we're providing daily support, and these players are engaging in the tools on a day-to-day basis and needing it and using it.
So you mentioned the app. Is it something that you guys kind of predicted, of what the USHL being typically 16 to 20 years old? It's an age group that's on their phone a lot, and this app is, constantly in their pocket. They have access to it anytime. Can you talk about maybe anticipating that usage being the way that it was and gearing it towards players of that age, as well as what the players get out of that app?
Yeah, it's like the whole world. It doesn't take a visionary right now to see everyone's going to be on mobile, because everyone is on mobile. The statistics in North America are mind-blowing. It's like 99 point something% of people have downloaded an app on their smartphone. Like, it's wild how many people are on the phone. And when we first ideated headversity, we ran across a stat that was, and this is old now, this is a 2-year-old stat, that the average millennial was checking their phone 217 times a day. And so that was a terrifying statistic, and just like, let's accept it. That's where we're going to be, right, is on our phones. And that's where I am, is on my phone. And so we need to continually move the training that we do, the resilience and mental health training, on a medium that people are going to be on, not just young adults and young athletes like the USHL folks, but people. So if that medium morphs in 3 or 4 years to something else, that's where we're going to go. For now, it's mobile learning.
Yeah, so can you dig into a little bit of what players and staff and everyone that has access to this app, what they can do within the app, kind of what programs they get to run through and all of the stuff that they get when they have access to it?
Yeah, no, I would be happy to. When you get on the app, you first take a resilience measure. And this is something that Headversity designed to be a validated metric to give folks a baseline as to where they are in their resilience skills. Those skills being mindfulness, staying present in here and now, mental health, knowing what mental health is and what mental illness is, where help, hardiness, developing those tools to weather the storm, mental fitness. That's really about stress regulation, energy management, how to eat, sleep, cognitive energy, and then finally self-expertise, knowing your why, knowing your purpose, why you do what you do. So those are the resilience skills. When you get onto the app, you take a measure as to what your skills are, and then the app guides you towards 2 things. And those 2 things are content, and that helps you learn about those 6 skills, and then tools. And those tools help you engage daily in improving and training those concepts. So as an example, if you are really low on the mental fitness score, you get a 1 out of 6. And you are really high on the mindfulness score. Let's say you meditate and you are like a monk and you are always mindful and always present, or a Jedi Knight. I think Jedi Knights are the most mindful people in film. You can go on the app, and if you get a low score on that mental fitness piece, it will guide you toward the mental fitness content and tools. So you're going to get cognitive behavioral therapy tools, how to think more clearly, regulate your stress. You'll get content on what mental fitness is and how to improve it.
So it's essentially like saying, to relate to hockey terms and with players, if a guy has a really good shot but isn't a great skater, you're not going to continue to work on your shot and make that better. You work on your weakness and work on your skating, right? So, when you find out what you're good and bad at in terms of mental health, you work towards the stuff that you're not so great at to build that up. Correct when saying that? Using
100%, yeah. Yeah, and so it's a coach, right? It's a coach that Brent, you said, that lives in the pocket of the players. We're going to steal that copy if you don't mind. It'll be on our website next week. Yeah, it's a coach, and we're all, we're a Canadian firm, right? So of course we're like hockey nuts. Yeah. So that analogy is perfect, and working with the USHL is just a dream for us because in a weird way, we think that hockey is such a great reflection of so much that goes on in our day-to-day lives in our world, and we love the sport. So it's a perfect analogy, Chris.
Last thing on hockey, we talk about hockey players being the toughest, guys in sports, and they're warriors out there and everything. For you, have you found it difficult and a challenge to kind of take a sport that has that mantra of manliness and toughness, and trying to convince these kids to talk about their mental health and really focus on that? I know you said you've had great response, and players, especially in the USHL, have done a good job of coming out with that thing. But, in the past, mental health has been looked at as a weakness. And in today's world, we're trying to change that and get people talking about it and everything. So with hockey, like I said, being that big rugged sport, if you have found any difficulty, and do you have like a specific style catered towards hockey players to try to get rid of that stigma and get players focused on this type of thing?
Yeah, I've seen such a dramatic shift in this. Like when I started training as a psychiatrist, the stigma was so strong still on mental health. And I made a film about it, a documentary on hockey concussion and mental health stigma, and those 2 worlds colliding. And what we were finding is, with a lot of our interviews, we're interviewing a lot of ex-NHLers, and there was one guy who was an ex-pro who we interviewed, And he was such a great interview. And I'm not going to say his name because the story is on the personal side. And this player, we asked him point blank, have you ever seen a psychiatrist? And it was in the middle of the interview, and it was a very jarring question. It was a poorly structured question. It wasn't smooth like the two of you guys are asking questions. It was very jarring. It was, and he stopped and he looked at me and he said, I don't need to answer that. And it was so uncomfortable because I was in this guy's living room, and this is like a great hockey player who I grew up like revering. And I was like, oh man, I messed up this whole interview. And in that, has not happened since that time. So call that 7-8 years ago that question was asked, and that pronounced stigma was just filled the room, right?
Yeah.
And fast forward now, and what we're seeing is hockey players reaching out, minor, major, junior. I know you guys don't use that term in the States, major, junior, but major, junior, professional, semi-professional hockey players getting on social media, Twitter, talking about mental health, reaching out. And there's been this evolution. And I think why it's happened quicker in hockey, and I do believe it's happened quicker in hockey, is something I've always noticed about hockey players compared to other athletes. And I'd like to get your opinions on this, is just a sense of humility. Like I find there is bravado and ruggedness and toughness on the ice, but most hockey players in North America are like ho-hum, kind of salt of the earth, really down to earth people. And that humility and kindness and lack of bravado off the ice, I think set the stage for like a nice, like, okay, we can talk about our mental health too. We all are dealing with it. Let's just figure it out.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you. And from Chris and my perspective, like we're both on the media side, and I think Chris would agree with this. Anytime you ask a player, hey, you scored a goal or did this well, the answer is never, yeah, I did a great thing. It's, yeah, it's because my teammate set me up. It's because my teammate did this. Like there is that sense of humility and sense of team within hockey. So I would definitely agree with you on that one.
And even if you ask any big-time sports reporter anywhere in the country, I don't want to say 100%, but most of the guys, even if they're big-time NFL guys that have worked just for a newspaper in the past, they say, man, I love working with the hockey players because they're the best to work with. They're going to be the ones to approach you. They're going to do that sort of thing and just be as humble as possible. And I think that's a case of too, you're taught that from a young age, right? And maybe hockey not being that number one sport, especially in America, where, everyone looks at the NFL players, the NBA players as these just superstar guys, where the NHL are a little more closer to the common person, right? They're still the superstars. They're still making millions of dollars, but you're just taught as a hockey player from the beginning, it's always we. And those guys that aren't like that get weeded out. And even if they're good players, they'll bounce around on several different teams, where in other sports, that's not the thing. It's more of a individualized sport. And just the community, I think, in general too, as you see when things like the plane crash for the team in Russia, when the bus crash with the Humboldt Broncos, when that stuff happens in the hockey world, everybody bands together. It doesn't matter who you hate, who you love, where you're at, what league you're in, everybody comes together. And I think that's a big part of kind of turning this, I'm a tough guy, I'm not gonna worry about mental health because that's gonna be shown as weak. These guys will come together once guys like Brian McGrattan and players of that upper echelon start talking about their mental health publicly. I think that community aspect that hockey just has the best. It just comes together, and I think that's what really helped it.
And I'm wondering about other sports, like if the same sort of movement will happen in other sports. The humility thing, like it was so striking to me when, I don't know if you guys remember when Evander Kane was in Vegas and he had the stacks of money and he was like putting them on his back and doing push-ups. And he was all these Instagram posts with him and like these stacks, wads of cash. And that was so heavily criticized because he was a hockey player, and hockey players just don't show off their money, and they don't go to Vegas and do push-ups with money on their back. Maybe that's other sport thing. Like you can see NFL superstars. There's a handful of examples of NFL and NBA superstars, even Major League Baseball to some extent, showing off how much money they have. But that humility of like, okay, you do make money, but you shouldn't show it off, was so heavily criticized. That was like a striking example to me of like what the hockey community is. And I think Evander Kane since has, he's become a real team guy, and he's been more of a gritty player and shown his stuff out on the ice where he's more of a team kind of humble person. But the community seemed to really shut that down, I think. Any showing of bravado off the ice.
Yeah, and I think too, another kind of funny thing about hockey players and just, talk about the toughness and the humility off the ice is every single big tough fighter that's the scariest person in the whole world. And people outside the hockey world don't understand this, but those just guys that you watch and you're like, that guy is an awful human being on the ice, right? The second they step off the ice, you're like, this is the nicest man in the world. Like when I was in Adirondack, Trevor Gillies was there, and he's the most feared guy in maybe of his generation on the ice, because you never know what he's going to do. He might snap and do something absolutely insane, but off the ice, like that guy was the nicest human being I've probably ever met in the hockey world. But when he just straps his skates on, he just has that Bob Probert, I'm going to go do whatever I can type of mentality. But that's what's really funny about this whole thing too, is it's the fighters and the tough guys that are starting this whole movement. And they're the ones that you wouldn't think, because they're supposed to be the tough guys. But when the second the horn sounds and the game's over, they're the best human beings you'll ever meet in the world.
Giant teddy bears.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you've ever met Kevin Westgarth and George Peros, the two Princeton grads, very sharp, very articulate, two of the kindest human beings you'll ever meet, ever. And then you shake their hands, and they have these like gnarled, broken, enormous cinder blocks for hands. And you're like, this guy could just crush me right now. But it's like, thank God he's so nice.
Yeah. Well, and Westgarth actually does a lot with our league, and we actually had him on an episode of the USHL podcast as well too. And we tried to get something out of him to talk about his playing career, and all he did was credit other people, because that's the type of guy he is. So.
To bring that full circle, I mean, it applies to the mental health piece as well, right? Like Kevin Westgarth is, he's a huge advocate for the mental health of players in his league that he's working in the USHL. I know he was influential in bringing headversity to the USHL. So we're very blessed to know a guy like that and know that he is a leader in the hockey community.
So stepping away from the hockey side of things, obviously this is a trying time. It's crazy for everybody. It's hopefully is a once in a lifetime experience, but mental health is kind of coming to the forefront, whether you're an athlete or whether you're the common person just sitting at home trying to find something new on Netflix to watch. But, from your perspective, what type of mental resilience and stuff can people do to kind of stay sane and get through this trying times, from your perspective, being the expert in your field?
Yeah, there's been a lot on this, in the media, and what we should be doing to stay healthy during this time. I think the first best step is for everyone just to accept their emotional experiences. And that may sound like a basic thing, but we're inundated with so much media. We're inundated with so many negatives right now. And we're all feeling stressed. We're all isolated, lonely at times, bored, and stressed with the ambiguity. So I think the first step is accepting that, and that's okay. Like, we're all experiencing that, and that's totally normal and fine as a really strong first step. And that's actually a powerful step, because from that you could, talk to people about it and have a shared experience. So the second piece of that is to try, in as much as we can right now, to recreate some of the communities that we knew to be helpful before. I would maybe see my family, and they live kind of in the suburbs of where I'm living, maybe see them every couple of weeks, but now we have this like weekly Zoom meeting thing, and it's been great. and we and some buddies that I haven't connected with in years, we're calling each other up or getting on Zoom and just trying to recreate the things that we knew kept us mentally healthy before. One of those things being community and friends. We need to push harder for that stuff now. The other piece is around exercise and schedule. So we know as human beings, we need to exercise and we need to keep a schedule. And it's super easy to let those things go when you're at home isolated and you have Netflix or you're a gamer and you have like that at your disposal, or you have like what we're seeing in some instances is just more like drinking. Because most North Americans are used to coming home and maybe having a glass of wine in the evening or on the weekend, or a beer, and that's like available 24/7 now. So the things that kept us mentally healthy before, schedule, exercise, community, those are the things we have to consciously push now.
Hopefully I can figure out this yoga thing, because I've been doing yoga every morning, and I'm about as flexible as it's like an old aluminum Easton stick. So I'm trying to figure this whole thing out, but hopefully we'll get it figured out.
The old Gretzky aluminum.
Yeah. I think that thing got a little more flex than my hip flexors. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You guys also have a podcast that focuses on mental resilience. How can people listen to that? I know we're not the only podcast in the world, so I want to give you guys a shout out. I know you guys are going to have a lot of useful stuff on there. How can people find that and have a listen and try to help out their mental resilience a little bit?
Yeah, so I appreciate that, Chris. The podcast is called Beyond the Checkbox, and it helps leaders in the workplace integrate more mental wellness into their workplaces. And we do so through interviews of frontline leaders in HR, or folks. We had Evan Rand on, and we're going to be publishing that. Leaders in sport, leaders in industry who look to integrate more mental wellness into their organization. And so you can check that out. You can go to almost any podcast platform and type in Beyond the Checkbox or my name, Ryan Todd, or you can go to our website at headversity.com and check it out there.
Perfect. And just to wrap it up with you, it's a problem all the time, but like we touched on, especially now, of just dealing with mental health and trying to keep yourself strong. If someone is struggling, where would you tell them to go right now? What kind of resources are out there if someone's having a tough time, not only now, but at any point?
The best resource for crisis intervention now is Google. And I say that because there are resources that are state by state, that are resources that are countrywide. In Canada, we have a whole different set of resources through Kids Help Phone. On the headversity app, we literally have a touch button for players in the USHL who are struggling or need to talk to someone right now. They can touch a button and text or call someone immediately. And so if you are struggling, it doesn't hurt to get on Google and to look up what resources are local to you. So I know in Canada, we do have the Kids Help Phone and the Canadian Mental Health Association. And we do have the groups like Headversity that are helping out. So that's not a bad first step. And so with other medical things, I wouldn't recommend getting on Google as your first step. The other thing that people often underappreciate is how well-trained family physicians are in the mental health of their patients. So please talk to your family physician. Please talk to someone who is trained and can help triage and figure out where you should go next. And family physicians are really the cornerstone of mental health in North America. So that should be somebody that you call. The final thing that I think people overlook as well is that if there's an emergency situation, mental health can be an emergency situation, and calling 911 is actually a viable option if there is a mental health crisis at play.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate your time. I know you got to get back to work here. You're a very busy guy. We had a short window, and giving us that time, we really appreciate it. And obviously we appreciate and really respect everything you're doing and helping out people in need, not only during this pandemic, but going forward and helping out the league and the players and everything. It's really making an impact, even if it is one small step at a time. So we appreciate everything you're doing, and we really, really appreciate your time in this busy schedule you have.
All right. Thanks, Chris and Brent. Thanks for having me on the show today. We have loved working with the USHL and all the awesome feedback we've gotten from the players. So thanks for having us on and continuing to support mental health in your league.
Awesome. Thank you, and stay safe.
All right, gents.
Well, that was a great interview, and we really, really appreciate Dr. Ryan Todd and giving us his time. I mean, he had a strict time. He's got to go from here to there because he had a lot of stuff going on. So we're thankful for him and his time. And it was such a great interview, and it was so insightful, and so many great things came from that. So I'm really glad we did it. So, thanks to you for setting everything up and kind of stepping outside the box and talked about hockey, but we also talked about a lot of important issues when it comes to mental health. So that was a really good interview and very insightful. And I hope you guys really enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, that was a good one. Like you said, very insightful, a lot of good information that might be one that you have to listen to twice to really digest all of it, get everything out of it, and see how you can apply that to your own life as well.
Don't be lazy, folks. Get the notepad out, write everything down so you don't miss anything. You don't have to listen to it once, but yeah, don't be afraid to hit the rewind and go back and listen, because there was so much stuff. I know we went over it as quickly as we possibly could because we had a bit of a timeline there, but a lot of great stuff. Don't worry about any of the the old time thoughts and values of mental. If you feel you're mentally healthy, you're weak. That's not the case at all. And now more than ever in this time of need, in this crazy time in the world, use those exercises, stay safe, stay sharp, and just really get your head in the right place and make yourself feel good about yourself, because you can either be a glass half empty person or a glass half full person right now. And there's no point in just building off of negativity. Like he said, just build off the positives, find positives. Yeah, your favorite sports team isn't playing. The Mets aren't playing right now. That stinks, but I haven't yelled at my TV in however long, and I haven't been just super upset because the Mets blew another late lead. So, I mean, look at the positives, all right? We're getting a little stress-free time right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. And as a Mets fan, I'm sure there definitely is the upside to not having baseball right now. But
yeah.
From my perspective, I'm a White Sox fan. It's finally the year, and we're going to postpone the baseball season. Like, oh, well, come on. I'm
okay.
About the north side here.
Yeah. It's finally the year, you say. It's finally the year for the Mets every single year, and then something crazy happens, and they bat out of order, and they don't even cheat, and they still get involved in the Astros scandal. It just doesn't make any sense. But I chose to be a Mets fan. I grew up in Indiana, and I still picked the Mets, so it's my fault. I take it all. So don't feel bad for me. It's 100% on me.
I'll take the flack for this one.
Yeah.
Being from Chicago my entire life, I've heard plenty from a certain side of the city, and I don't want to name which one, but it's not east, it's not south, and it's not west, that I believe the quote is, "This is the year."
Yeah.
Something to that effect. But all jokes aside, everybody's dealing with something. I mean, we're all missing sports. Some of us more than others, as it's livelihood for guys like us. But
yeah.
I mean, we're all going through the same thing, but in different ways. So again, really happy to have Dr. Ryan Todd join us and give all the great insight that he gave.
And looking ahead, next time we'll have Ben on, even though Brent, I don't know how we can kick you off. You did such a great job, but in your U Show podcast debut. But later in the week, we'll have Ben Gesselson hop back on. We'll talk about the NHL Central Scouting. A lot of great results there, and a lot of players moving up too in the final rankings and really making themselves known for the NHL draft, which is coming in. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know when it's going to happen. Hopefully it happens relatively soon, and all those kids get to experience hearing their name calling, and it doesn't happen in a week window right before the season starts next year. But when it happens, I know the USHL will have a major impact and a lot of great names. And also Also looking ahead, our guest on the episode later in this week will be none other than former Clark Cup champion with the Cedar Rapids Rough Riders and current star winger with the Detroit Red Wings, Justin Abdelkader. We didn't have just one member of the Abdelkader family. We actually had two. One obviously is a NHL star in Justin Abdelkader, but we also had a future professional drummer and his young son. So he jumped on and didn't talk that much because he can't quite talk yet, but eventually in the middle of the interview, he ran off and started playing the drums so we could barely hear Justin. But it was good. We did a spelling bee with Justin Abdelkader because his name is so hard to spell, and we found out his name is actually pretty easy to spell with some of the names we gave him and challenged him. But other than that, it was an insightful interview. He had a lot of great things to say about the league and his time in Cedar Rapids. He's only spent 1 year of his entire life outside of Michigan, and it was the year he was in the USHL with Cedar Rapids. But it was a good one, and I think you guys will really enjoy it. And we'll, talk some Central Scouting, like I said, and it should be a good one later in the week.
I don't want to say, well, I should say, I certainly hope it's not the only drum solo that we get during our time on the USHL U-Show podcast, but I would have to assume if it's not the only one, we're not going to get many drum solos on this one. So
no.
glad to have that little interlude in the middle of the episode. A great drum solo from young Jackson Abdelkader.
And then Justin had to go down and don't touch my drum set.
we should splice the PG version of the Step Brothers scene.
Yeah, perfect. And so thanks to Justin for giving us the time. So that's a good interview, and I think you guys will really enjoy it. So talked hockey. We did a spelling bee and had some fun with his son's drum set. So it's a good one, and we certainly think that you shouldn't miss it. That's for sure.
No, you shouldn't miss any of the episodes. But
yeah,
we're all busy.
I mean, what else do you have to do, guys? Come on. We know there's no excuses. All right, during the season, we know there's excuses, but right now, we know there's no excuses. You're not going to miss the U-Show podcast. And Brent, before we go, great job, man. We'll have you on when we get close to the season because I've been waiting to debut the Brent Meskes to the week for certain teams just because I love puns. But other than that, I mean, you're a natural, man.
It's a brutal pun and probably equally brutal to my keys to the game, which I don't want to give too many spoilers, but one of them is usually the team that scores more is going to win the game. So just as an FYI, that
sticks to the cliches, but not even the difficult ones. We don't need to get the puck deep, cycle it, play a full 60,
rely on the teammates.
Yeah,
coach had a good game plan.
Play good in our own end.
Yep.
Defense leads to offense.
Strong D.
Stick to the game plan. Stick to the process, or sometimes process.
Oh man, yeah. But
anyway, like I said, I don't know when we'll have you on again, but great job today. Thanks for hopping on, and this was a great little episode, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. For Dr. Ryan Todd and Brent Meske, I'm Chris Treft, and this was the U-Show podcast.
This is the U-Show podcast.